but I'm grateful and fortunate for the chance. I have admired my father all of my life, and I love him with all my heart.
For ages, people have been guessing about the relationship between Tiffany Trump and Melania. Were they ever close, or was it all just for show? Some thought they were best friends behind the scenes, while others claimed there was real tension between them. Now at 31, Tiffany is finally clearing things up. And trust me, she didn't hold back. What she shared completely flips everything we thought we knew about Melania. And of course, in true Trump fashion, there's always more than what meets the eye. So what's the real story between the First Lady and her stepdaughter? Get ready, because the truth is a total shocker. Let's dive in. Tiffany Trump's low-key life. When most people hear the name Trump, they picture fancy city skylines, gold elevators, and big-money business deals. But one of the Trump kids has had a totally different experience, so much so that people often forget she's even part of the family. Tiffany Trump, the only child of Donald Trump and actress Marla Maples, grew up far away from the spotlight of Trump Tower. Born on October 13, 1993 in West Palm Beach, Florida, Tiffany came into the world just 2 months before her parents tied the knot. That small detail? It actually set the stage for a life that was nothing like the rest of the Trump kids. While Donald Jr., Ivanka, and Eric were growing up under the glaring lights of New York City, being groomed for business success, Tiffany was on an entirely different track. After her parents divorced in 1999, Marla Maples made a bold move. She left the Trump world behind and settled in the calm, easygoing hills of California. Why? To give Tiffany a somewhat normal childhood, something the Trump lifestyle didn't really offer. And guess what? It worked. As much as it could for someone with the last name Trump. Instead of rubbing shoulders with big-shot business types or being trained to take over a real estate empire, Tiffany was hanging out in Calabasas, bouncing on trampolines and binge-watching Gilmore Girls with her mom. Her school? A private one, called Viewpoint School, which costs more than $30,000 a year. Still privileged, sure, but definitely a far cry from the media-crazy life her siblings had back east. Marla, who stayed single by choice, made it clear she didn't want anyone getting in the way of her relationship with Tiffany. And that dedication really showed. Friends often said the two were more like best mates than mother and daughter. Late-night talks, cooking together, and going on hikes, it was all about those real, quiet moments, far away from the press and the fashion events. But while Tiffany had this close bond with her mom, her relationship with her dad was a little more distant. Donald Trump did support her financially, no question about that. He made sure she had top-notch schools, a safe neighborhood, and everything she needed. But when it came to being around, well, that was more Marla's role. Tiffany did visit Mar-a-Lago during spring breaks, and Donald would fly out occasionally for school events. But compared to his constant involvement with his kids in New York, Tiffany didn't spend as much time with him. Marla once summed it up perfectly, saying, "Her daddy is a good provider with education and such, but as far as time, it was just me." That pretty much sums up a lot. Now, things start to get even juicier. For years, people have been whispering about what really went on between Tiffany and her stepmom, Melania Trump. Were they close? Or was it all just for the cameras? Did Tiffany feel like an outsider in a family that seemed so tightly controlled and always under the spotlight? Now at 31, Tiffany is opening up more, and what she's revealing is throwing everyone for a loop. The picture people thought they had of her? Well, turns out that was just part of the story, and it only gets more surprising when you look back to the very start, to how Tiffany even came to be. Before there was Tiffany Trump, there was a massive scandal that completely rocked the Trump family and took over the tabloids across America. Donald and Marla Maples' highly publicized affair, What Went Down. At the time, Donald Trump was still married to Ivana Trump, his first wife, when he met Marla Maples, a young blonde actress and model from Georgia. They crossed paths in 1985, but it wasn't until a few years later that things started to get serious. By 1989, whispers of an affair began circulating in New York City's social circles and on tabloid front pages. People were starting to notice. Donald was seen more often with Marla in public, and the gossip quickly grew into a full-blown media storm. But the real explosion came during a family ski trip to Aspen, Colorado, in late 1989. According to reports, Ivana and Marla crossed paths on the snowy slopes. Ivana allegedly confronted Marla right in front of stunned onlookers and photographers. That one moment went down in tabloid history, and suddenly, Donald's personal life was everyone's business. By 1990, Donald and Ivana's marriage was barely hanging on. The media was all over them, tracking every move. Marla even gave a now infamous quote to a tabloid, saying Donald was the best sex I've ever had. That line appeared in newspapers and gossip columns everywhere and followed them for years, becoming a strange pop culture reference. In 1992, Donald and Ivana's marriage officially ended. The divorce was long, messy, and very public. Ivana walked away with a massive settlement, rumored to include over $14 million, a mansion in Connecticut, and an apartment in Trump Plaza. But even though the dust hadn't even settled, Donald didn't waste any time making things official with Marla. In December of 1993, Donald married Marla Maples in a flashy, high-profile wedding at the iconic Plaza Hotel in New York City. The event was packed with celebrities, business moguls, and plenty of media attention. That same year, their daughter, Tiffany Trump, was born. But if anyone thought the drama would stop there, they were mistaken. On the surface, everything looked perfect, but behind the scenes, things weren't as rosy. Donald and Marla's marriage quickly became strained. The chemistry that once made headlines didn't seem to last, and the relationship didn't turn out to be a happily ever after. Constant rumors of infidelity, emotional distance, and arguments started circulating. By 1997, the couple had separated, and 2 years later, in 1999, they finalized their divorce. Marla reportedly received just over $2 million in the settlement, a far cry from what Ivana had gotten years earlier. Why? A strict prenuptial agreement was one big reason. After the divorce, Marla took a step back from the spotlight. She focused on raising Tiffany and embraced a more spiritual, health-conscious lifestyle. She moved to California, far away from the chaos of Manhattan and the media frenzy. Meanwhile, Donald was back on the dating scene. Since Tiffany was still a child when Melania came into the picture, Marla made sure to encourage a positive relationship between them. She'd bring Tiffany to New York a few times a year, letting her have dinners with her dad and Melania, making sure those connections were built naturally. But let's be real, Tiffany still wasn't exactly growing up in the heart of the Trump family. She wasn't at the same parties, the same events, or constantly around to soak up the Trump lifestyle. Tiffany herself has been pretty open about how different her childhood was from her siblings. In a 2013 interview with Oprah, she straight up said, "Since I have grown up on the West Coast, I'm definitely different from all of them growing up on the East Coast." And honestly, that's probably an understatement. While her siblings were being trained for business, making high-profile appearances, and climbing the corporate ladder in their dad's empire, Tiffany was just living her life. No corporate pressure, no headlines every day, no expectation to carry on the Trump name. Because of this, Tiffany has always been a bit of an outsider in the Trump family. One family insider even admitted she didn't really get to grow up in the Trump household and didn't have the same privileges as her half-siblings. And you can see it. While Ivanka was always a fixture in the Trump organization and later in the White House, Tiffany was off doing her own thing, going to school, hanging out with her friends, and keeping away from the spotlight. But here's the kicker. Despite the distance, despite the different upbringing, Tiffany has always spoken positively about her dad. She's called him the funniest, most loving father, and even though they didn't spend tons of time together, she never felt like their relationship was strained. We see each other as much as possible, and of course we speak on the phone. I think whatever the distance, I don't think that dictates any relationship strains, she once said. And that's an interesting perspective, right? Because from the outside, it'd be easy to think the distance created a wedge. But Tiffany doesn't seem to feel that way at all. And while Tiffany's childhood was worlds apart from her siblings, What she did have was a calm, loving, grounded upbringing with her mom, away from the chaos of the Trump empire. And though it made her the different Trump, it also gave her a sense of independence that the others might never fully grasp. When Melania Trump became a stepmother, Donald Trump and Melania Knoss's story started out like some quirky twist of fate. It was September 1998 at the Kit Kat Club in Manhattan, a popular hotspot. Melania had only been in the US for 2 years, chasing her modeling dreams. And there she was at a glitzy event when she caught the attention of Donald Trump. And, well, we all know Donald. He's not shy about going after what he wants. He asked for her number, but Melania, ever the composed and independent woman, didn't just give it to him. Instead, she asked for his number, flipping the script entirely. That little move, just a glimpse of the quiet confidence that would define her role in his life for years to come. Fast forward a bit, and Melania found herself in a whole new world, not just as Donald's girlfriend, but stepping into a family that was already well established. Donald's kids weren't little children anymore. They were grown, independent, and had their own lives. In some ways, this made things easier. No messy custody issues or co-parenting headaches. But it also meant that she was stepping into a space where she wasn't expected to be anyone's mother, but still had to find her place. And let's face it, dealing with a powerful, opinionated businessman like Donald is one thing, but stepping into a family dynamic where his kids already had their own routines, relationships, and expectations? Well, that's a whole other ballgame. That's a whole other level of challenge, isn't it? One relationship that really stands out is the one between Melania and Tiffany Trump. Unlike Ivanka, Donald Jr., and Eric, who were already adults, Tiffany was just a little girl, only 6 years old when Melania and Donald started dating. And because Tiffany was living in California with her mom, Marla Maples, she wasn't around much, which could have made for some serious emotional distance between her and Melania. But Melania wasn't about to let that happen. She didn't want Tiffany to feel like she was the other child, the one who didn't quite fit in with the tight-knit Trump family in New York. A heartwarming moment from their early days together is captured in a photo from 2000, where Melania, with a warm smile, is holding 7-year-old Tiffany at a tennis match while Donald looks on. It's a simple picture, but it says so much. Melania wasn't just Donald's girlfriend tagging along. She was actively making an effort to connect, to show warmth, and to be present for Tiffany. And that's probably something Tiffany really needed. With a famous dad who wasn't always around, and living on the other side of the country, it could have easily made her feel like an outsider in her own family. But Melania wanted her to feel included, to know she had a place in the family, no matter how messy things were between her parents. In her memoir, Melania talks about her philosophy on being a stepmother, and honestly, it's a breath of fresh air. She never saw herself as someone stepping in to replace their mothers. Instead, she saw her role as a supportive figure, someone the kids could count on without the pressure of having to accept her in any particular way. And let's face it, that's probably the best approach. No one wants to feel forced to like or accept a step-parent just because they married into the family. Relationships like these take time, patience, and mutual respect, and Melania seemed to get that from the start. One of her core beliefs is summed up in a simple phrase she lives by: don't control, communicate. You can see how that's not just about her relationship with Donald's kids, but how she handles everything in life, especially being in the public eye. She's not the type to dominate conversations or make everything about her. Instead, she listens, observes, and speaks only when necessary. This approach seems to have served her well, especially in a family like the Trumps, where everyone has their own strong opinions and isn't afraid to voice them. Tiffany Trump has always been the most mysterious member of the Trump family. Growing up far away from the political circus, there have always been more questions than answers about her relationship with Melania. But now, finally, we're hearing directly from Tiffany, and what she's revealed is definitely turning heads. Some might say they saw this coming, while others are going to be completely shocked. But trust me, You'll want to stay tuned until the end, because the truth is even messier than anyone expected. Now, when you look at the Trump family on the surface, they've always appeared to be this flawless, picture-perfect unit, glamorous, powerful, and always ready for the cameras. From red carpets to political rallies, they sure know how to put on a united front. But if you look closer, especially when it comes to Tiffany and Melania's dynamic, there's more going on beneath the surface. It's easy to assume that Tiffany and Melania just smile for the cameras and keep things polite, because in high-profile families like the Trumps, where status and image are everything, that's usually the safest route. But if you really pay attention, if you watch their body language or listen closely to what's left unsaid, you'll notice little, almost hidden moments that hint at something deeper. Let's face it, relationships in families like this aren't always smooth sailing. With all the power, politics, and complicated pasts mixed in, it's no surprise that some dynamics can feel strained. But what's surprising is how Tiffany and Melania's relationship has quietly evolved over time. There wasn't any dramatic announcement or flashy headlines, just a steady, subtle evolution that feels much more real and genuine. One of the clearest moments where this shift was spotlighted came during Tiffany's wedding in 2022. The grand celebration took place at Mar-a-Lago, and as you can imagine, it was an elegant and luxurious event from start to finish. But beyond the glittering gowns and carefully chosen guest list, there was something else that caught people's attention: the way the family came together. Weddings are emotional moments for any family. They can either bring people closer or put long-standing tensions on full display. In Tiffany's case, her wedding seemed to do something rare. It brought a sense of unity to the Trump circle. And one of the biggest surprises? Melania and Marla Maples, Tiffany's mother and Donald's ex-wife, both attended the bridal shower. Yes, you read that correctly. The current wife and the ex-wife, celebrating side by side. That's not something you see every day, especially not in high-profile families like this one. You'd usually expect distance or tension in situations like this, but at Tiffany's bridal shower, there were smiles, laughter, and even a shared appreciation for the occasion. They weren't just tolerating each other, they were participating, making this moment stand out as something special. It says a lot about their relationship and how far things have come. Now let's talk about a small but significant detail: the wedding cake. Sure, most weddings have a cake, but this one was a special Tiffany blue creation, matching the bride's name and adding that personal touch. It may seem like a small thing, but considering how meticulously planned every Trump family event is, it starts to feel like more than just a color choice. It was symbolic, a visual representation that this wasn't just about Tiffany. It was about both sides of her life coming together. But it wasn't only the women of the family showing support. Tiffany's place within the family has often been misunderstood. Since she grew up on the West Coast with her mother, many assumed she was an outsider, maybe even disconnected from the rest of her half-siblings. But behind the scenes, things weren't as distant as people thought. Insiders say the siblings have always gotten along better than the public realizes. They may not be constantly posting pictures together or making a big show of their relationship on social media, but that doesn't mean they weren't close. And that quiet closeness became more visible at the 2024 Republican National Convention. At that event, something shifted. Tiffany wasn't in the background like she had been in previous years. She stood proudly with her siblings, front and center, making her presence known in a way that felt confident and natural. It was one of the first times the public truly saw her stepping into a more significant role within the family. And it didn't feel forced. On the contrary, it felt like she had grown into her place on her own terms. Meanwhile, Ivanka, who had once been one of the most prominent figures in the political scene alongside her father, had noticeably stepped back. Donald Jr. and Eric have remained active in politics, carrying the Trump name in the public eye. But now, Tiffany is starting to emerge, not necessarily as a political figure, but as someone with a more solid and recognized role in the family's narrative. Part of the reason for Tiffany's rise could be her growing connection with Melania. While Melania isn't exactly the most outspoken member of the Trump family, her support carries a lot of weight. When you watch Tiffany become more present, more involved, and more at ease during family events, it's hard not to wonder if Melania played a quiet, guiding role in helping her get to this place. So what's happening behind the scenes with Melania? Why is she suddenly showing more warmth in ways that no one really expected? Well, here's where things start to get really interesting. Let's take a moment to talk about Melania. Unlike the rest of the Trump clan, Melania is not one to seek the limelight. She doesn't hold press conferences, post long messages on social media, or make bold statements in interviews. In fact, she's likely one of the quietest figures in modern First Lady history. But here's the thing. Just because she stays silent doesn't mean she lacks influence. Quite the opposite. Even Donald Trump himself has spoken about her mysterious nature. In an interview back in 2023, he openly admitted that Melania prefers to stay out of the public eye because, as he put it, the media can be very mean and nasty. He explained that she values a life of privacy and dignity, far removed from the chaos and noise that usually surrounds the Trump family. And honestly, who can blame her? Every move she makes gets analyzed, every expression dissected. In a world where public image reigns supreme, Melania has mastered the art of letting her silence do all the talking. But here's where things start to get truly intriguing. Despite her low-profile approach, Melania plays a much larger role behind the scenes than most people realize. Those who have worked closely with the Trump family describe her as sharp, observant, and fiercely protective of her inner circle. She may not speak much, but she sees everything. And when she does act, it's always deliberate. So when people began noticing that Melania was spending more time with Tiffany Trump, particularly in more relaxed, natural settings, it raised some eyebrows. After all, this is a family that's known for its perfectly curated public image. Every photo, every appearance, every statement is typically rehearsed and polished. But the moments between Melania and Tiffany, they felt different, less posed, more real. So why now? What's changed? One possible reason is that Tiffany is about to enter a major new chapter in her life, motherhood. And if anyone knows what it's like to raise a child under the intense pressure of the Trump legacy, it's Melania. She's been there, done that, and has done it mostly on her own terms. Melania gave birth to her son Barron in 2006, and from the start, she made it clear that she wanted to raise him herself. She often spoke about how hands-on she was as a mother, making his meals, helping with homework, and ensuring he stayed grounded despite growing up surrounded by extreme wealth and fame. While critics often reduced her role to that of a trophy wife, Melania quietly disproved them by proving herself to be a devoted mother who didn't rely on nannies or staff to raise her child. She understood the challenges of protecting a child from the intense media scrutiny that comes with being part of the Trump family. So now, seeing Tiffany entering that same world, it's possible that Melania feels a sense of connection, or even responsibility toward her. There's also something significant about their shared experiences. Both Melania and Tiffany have been somewhat outsiders in the Trump inner circle. Tiffany, being Donald's daughter from his second marriage to Marla Maples, wasn't raised under the spotlight like Ivanka or Donald Jr. On the other hand, Melania, originally from Slovenia, had to find her place in a family and country that often viewed her as different. Maybe this unspoken understanding created a bridge between the two women, a quiet bond that didn't need to be flaunted. And now, as Tiffany embarks on this new phase of her life, Melania's presence feels more meaningful than ever. It's no longer about photo ops or creating headlines. It's about providing support, offering guidance, and perhaps even passing on a bit of maternal wisdom. Whatever the reason, one thing is for certain. Their relationship seems to be evolving into something far more genuine than anyone expected. In a family where so much of life is scripted, filtered, and choreographed for public consumption, that kind of authentic connection is rare and powerful. But of course, the story doesn't end here. Tiffany Trump, now 31, is stepping into the role of a mother herself, and after years of silence and speculation, she's ready to speak up. She's ready to reveal the truth about her relationship with Melania. And trust me, what she has to say might surprise you. You know how people always seem to love jumping to conclusions about famous families? Well, Tiffany Trump and Melania Trump have been at the center of speculation for years, with many convinced that their relationship was distant, awkward, or downright cold. But now, fresh details are giving everyone a real peek into what's been going on behind closed doors, and let's just say, it's not what most people expected. For the longest time, there were assumptions that Tiffany was basically the forgotten Trump child. Unlike Ivanka, who was always in the spotlight during Donald Trump's presidency, Tiffany stayed much more low-key. She wasn't delivering speeches, attending every White House event, or really being seen much at all. And naturally, people started to wonder, was there family drama? Was she being kept at arm's length? Was Melania, the private and always glamorous First Lady, intentionally keeping Tiffany in the background? Rumors started to swirl, especially when stories surfaced about Tiffany going months without talking to her father. Add into the equation that Tiffany Trump was primarily raised by her mother, Marla Maples. And it didn't take long before people began to assume that she was somehow an outsider in the Trump family. This idea was further fueled by the media, which consistently portrayed Tiffany as the other daughter. Unlike Ivanka, who was often seen at the center of the action during her father's presidency, Tiffany seemed to be on the outskirts. She wasn't making speeches, attending high-profile White House events, or getting as much media attention. This led many to assume that she wasn't as deeply involved in the Trump family business, and perhaps even didn't quite fit into the shiny billionaire family image that the public had come to associate with the Trumps. Trump biographer Gwenda Blair even pointed out how Tiffany appeared to exist in her own world, separate from her siblings. This only served to reinforce the idea that Tiffany wasn't as closely connected to her family as others were. And naturally, this led to speculation that Tiffany and Melania, her stepmother, didn't share a close relationship. After all, if Tiffany was distanced from the Trump brand and not as active in the family business, it seemed unlikely that Melania, who is famously private and keeps a low profile, would form a deep connection with her. But here's the twist. Those assumptions were based on nothing more than speculation. The reality is far different. In truth, Tiffany and Melania share a much stronger bond than most people realize. Despite the public perception of their relationship, Melania has always made sure that Tiffany felt included in important family events and that she stayed connected with her half-siblings. One of the clearest examples of this was when Tiffany was planning her wedding to Michael Boulos. Melania, despite her usual low-key presence, played a surprisingly significant role behind the scenes, helping to make the event a success. This only brought them closer, and it became evident that their connection wasn't just distant or formal, as some had assumed. It was, in fact, genuine and meaningful. So why is Tiffany deciding to speak out about all of this now? A lot has changed in her life recently. At 31, she's married, and she's preparing to start her own family. And as anyone who's experienced major life changes knows, those moments often prompt you to reflect on your relationships in a new light. Tiffany now sees things from a different perspective. She has a better understanding of how complicated family dynamics can be, and how, despite the rumors and assumptions, her bond with Melania has always been real, even when the public couldn't see it. Additionally, the Trump family itself is undergoing significant shifts. Ivanka, who had been at the forefront of the Trump brand, has taken a step back from both politics and the media spotlight. With Ivanka now stepping out of the political arena, Tiffany's role within the family has started to evolve naturally. She's more visible, more involved in family matters, and she's not shying away from showing the world that she is not some estranged or forgotten daughter, as some had previously thought. Now seems like the perfect time for Tiffany to speak up and finally put all the speculation to rest. By doing so, she's making it clear that her relationship with Melania and with the rest of the Trump family is far more meaningful than anyone realized. Thanks for watching, fam. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. And if you're hungry for more exciting stories, click on the next video that pops up on your screen.